Hello and welcome to Excellence Noir. Today we are talking about James Hemings. He was born a slave and became the first professional black chef in America. James Hemings was the mastermind behind many of America's favorite dishes, including macaroni and cheese, but also ice cream, French fries, whipped cream, and more. James was born into slavery in Virginia in 1765. He was the second of 6 children by his mother's enslaver, John Wallis, who took his mother Elizabeth as a concubine after he was widowed for the 3rd time. John Wallis did not acknowledge paternity of the 6 children he fathered with Elizabeth Hemings. At 8 years old, James was purchased by Thomas Jefferson at his residence at Monticello. Little is known of James' early childhood, but as a teenager, he and his older brother, Robert Hemings, served as enslaved valets in Williamsburg and Richmond during Jefferson's 2 terms as wartime governor of Virginia. When British troops invaded Richmond in 1781, James and Robert Hemings took Jefferson's wife, James' half-sister Martha, and children to safety. When John Wallis died in 1773, he gave Elizabeth and her 10 children to his daughter, Martha Jefferson. James and Sally accompanied Jefferson to Paris when he was appointed minister to France. At some time during the 2 years that James and his sister Sally were in Paris, it is believed that Thomas Jefferson began an intimate relationship with her, which we know he did. However, the fact that Sally was between 14 and 16 years old when Jefferson was in his 40s speaks to the fact that it wasn't a consensual relationship. Of course it wasn't. Today, we would call what Jefferson did, having an intimate relationship with a minor, statutory rape, and Jefferson would be labeled a sex offender and would be serving prison time for his crime, which would have been a fate that he deserved. In Paris, James and Sally was considered free and not enslaved. And in many ways, to taste freedom for a short period of time seems really cruel. And I'm sure James and Sally wished they could remain free instead of going back to slavery once Jefferson returned to the U.S. For the first 3 years in Paris, James studied cooking and apprenticed to pastry chefs and other specialists, including the chef of a prince. He paid personally to learn the language from a French tutor. James is credited with bringing many French cooking styles to the colonial United States and developing new recipes inspired by French cuisine. Another dish James introduced to American cuisine is snow eggs, which is originally French and consists of meringue and custard. James also brought creme brulee and meringues, but most famously, he is accredited with introducing macaroni and cheese to the United States. Evidence, including modern DNA analysis, indicate that Thomas Jefferson impregnated Sally Hemings several times over the years. Sally was enslaved at his Monticello estate, and historians now broadly agree that he was the father of her 5 children. James prepared cuisine that was served to international guests, statesmen, authors, scientists, and European aristocrats, receiving a steady salary, yet he was paid only half the amount that Jefferson paid his previous chef. In 1789, Jefferson returned to the United States, bringing James and Sally back with him. Under French law, the Hemings could have sued for their freedom, but historian and Jefferson expert Annette Gordon-Reed speculates they did not want to abandon their family who had remained at Monticello. James agreed to train his brother Peter in French cooking in exchange for freedom. Jefferson resigned as Secretary of State and prepared to return to Monticello, fully expecting James to return as well. No record of their conversation or perhaps confrontation exists, but it appears that James refused to return without the promise of freedom. In late 1790, the capital moves to Philadelphia, where James prepares dinners for the president and European diplomats, Jefferson's fellow cabinet members, congressmen, and many national and international visitors. His wage of $7 a month is the same amount that Jefferson paid freed staff. James was often allotted market money, indicating he made purchases for the kitchen. James circulated among other free and enslaved working people and tradesmen, and likely learned he could gain legal freedom if he stayed in Philadelphia. James negotiated with Thomas Jefferson for his freedom, which he gained in 1796 after training his brother Peter for 3 years to replace him as a chef. On February 5, 1796, nearly 2 years following James and Sally's return to Monticello, Jefferson draws up the document discharging James Hemings of all duties and claims of servitude, legally freeing him from bondage, making James one of the first freed slaves in America. As a freedman, James traveled. His destinations are not recorded, though a remark by Jefferson to his daughter Martha implies that if he returned to Paris, he would have found a very different city with the continuing revolution and many old acquaintances dead. Jefferson noted that James had returned to Philadelphia and was contemplating a trip to Spain, though Jefferson tried to persuade him to give up traveling and save his money. James traveled from 1797 to 1801, and no one knows exactly where he traveled to, but he was working in a Baltimore tavern in 1801, and President-elect Jefferson at the time assumed James would be willing to come and work for him again, and sent an inquiry to Baltimore requesting that James join him. Jefferson's financial records show that James did return to Monticello in August and September of that year, while Jefferson was in the White House. While there's no definitive proof, historians suggest that James may have had a somewhat fluid sexuality, but I don't know exactly where that's coming from because there's never been any kind of recorded documentation that stated that James was bisexual or was fluid in today's terms. I think the rumor came about because James never married and never had children, but that doesn't make someone bisexual or fluid. So again, I think that was just the mindset of the time. In 1801, James left Monticello for the last time. James died by apparent suicide in Baltimore in 1801 at age 36, likely due to a combination of mental distress, the pressures of freedom without equality, and possible alcoholism from years of working in Jefferson's kitchen and not being appreciated by equal pay. James ending his life years after gaining his freedom was very tragic. It was noted that James was in some type of delirium days before he died. And again, this could have been from alcohol poisoning. Hats off to Mr. James Hemings, whose life stands as a powerful testament to brilliance forged under bondage. Enslaved, yet exceptionally skilled, he helped shape American cuisine by bringing refined French culinary traditions to the early United States, influencing tastes that endure today. Despite the injustices he faced and the personal cost of his freedom, James' talent, perseverance, and cultural impact remains extraordinary. His legacy challenges history to recognize the enslaved individuals whose intellect and creativity helped build the nation, even when their names were long denied the honor they deserved. And thank you so much for watching.